Omar ibn Said was a wealthy Islamic scholar who was born and educated in an African region then called Futa Toro. He was born in the late 1700s and received 25 years of schooling in Africa. He studied in Bundu under his brother Sheikh Muhammad Said. Said was mostly known for his Arabic autobiography. Despite his inability to speak English, his autobiography describes how he was captured by a great army and placed on a great ship headed to Charleston, South Carolina. Almost half of all enslaved Africans were brought to Charleston before being sold. Said managed to escape his cruel master and fled to Fayetteville, North Carolina, where he was recaptured and sent to a prison camp. Omar ibn Said was discovered and eventually taken into the household of Jim Owen and John Owen, who was the governor of North Carolina at that time. He remained with the Owens until his death in 1864. He became the first known slave to write an autobiography in Arabic in the U.S. His manuscripts show a long tradition of written culture in Africa at that time. They also provide a tremendous tool for research on Africa in the 18th and 19th century.
We wanted to know what the process was coming from Muslim countries to America. When did it start? And the earliest we could trace it back to was from Africa. It was Muslims from Africa who came, who were the first Muslims in America. And so we invited different professors to cover this conference on Muslims in America. And so we had Sylvia Ndiouf from Senegal who came. She's actually one of the writers in this book. We had Derek Beard who came, and I'll say a few words now about him. Then we had professors from Asia, Pakistan, who spoke about the Asian migration. We had professors from the Middle East who spoke about Muslims from the Middle East coming. And so, but the earliest were from Africa. And Derek Beard was a collector. He was not a scholar, he was a collector. And he owned the manuscript of Omar ibn Said. He was the owner. And he said he had found it, he had purchased it, and it was in his collection, his family's collection, and that was 2002. And when he talked about it, and he displayed it for all the people who had come to their conference, he said, it should be here at the Library of Congress. It should be part of the library's collections. And we all said, yes, of course it should be. But at that point, he was not selling and we were not buying. But that's how we found out it existed.
It provided historical information and cultural information about the existence of Africans who came here enslaved, and they were Muslims. You don't really hear much, or at least I didn't when I was growing up, and about the Muslim contributions in the United States. We're still learning more about Omar ibn Said because he wrote his own autobiography. And when we talk about enslaved Africans here and what they contributed to the United States, you don't really realize who individuals were. We've learned a lot just from this one man and a little bit about his life in the past. But we have other histories that are being researched and found, and we get more information right now. And I thought that was very important.
In 2017, Derek Beard, the previous owner of the manuscripts, reached out to the Library of Congress to inform them of his declining health. He also informed them of his willingness to sell his Omar ibn Said collection to the well-known auction house Sotheby's, located in London, England.
All these materials were, in fact, in England. And so they were then shipped to us here in a big crate. I mean, it was a huge crate of wood with metal all wrapped up, and they were all screwed on. We had screws on the box, and it arrived great fanfare to Washington, and we took one of the major rooms here next to us in Rare Books, which is a very beautiful room, and everybody gathered. There are 25 chiefs, directors, and, important people from around the library. Everyone came, and we started unscrewing that box, and people were taking films and they were taking photographs and so on, and this is how it arrived.
Before the library acquired these manuscripts, Derek Beard traveled to many places, granting various academic institutions, art galleries, museums, and even historians an opportunity to examine the documents.
We call it the Library of Congress, and of course this is how it started. But we're also the National Library of the United States. And so to have this here means that A, it was purchased with taxpayers' dollars. It was purchased by Americans. It is American money. It is not a private collector's money. It is the money coming from our tax dollars that purchased this manuscript. And it is available for every American to come and see and to use and to do research.
Mr. Beard granted a Yale professor the permission to make copies of the autobiography and publish a book titled A Muslim American Slave, The Life of Omar ibn Said.
And in Islam, all ownership belongs to God. Only God is an owner. No one owns anything. We come, we live, and then we die. We really are not owner. But why does he start his biography with Surah Al-Mulk? Clearly, he is telling the people that, ownership is God's. It's not yours. You have no right to own, and certainly not to own a human being, another human being. So what I'm simply saying here is that Omar bin Said's autobiography opens up a world. A world we are looking at a history which has really not been written yet. There is so much that can be discovered from the existing manuscripts in Africa. Okay? This one was written here. However, he comes from a long tradition of those who wrote manuscripts there. See? So Senegal has a large collection of manuscripts. Mali has a wonderful collection of manuscripts. Nigeria is enormously rich with manuscripts. And those manuscripts are about everything, from medicine to the stars, to astronomy and cosmology, to culture, traditions, food, anything you want. They need to be preserved. So, in a way, Omar bin Said is leading the way and taking us back to West Africa and saying, I'm bringing you this, but, look at what my ancestors did, and what they wrote and what they contributed. And those things need to be preserved as well, you see. We need to go back, and we need to go to Nigeria, we need to go to Mali, we need to go everywhere, and we need to digitize these manuscripts.
It reveals a lot about, like I said earlier, the history and the culture of the two continents, which are so far apart, and yet they're being brought together by this man. And so when we're looking at history, studying history, American history, we actually also have to look at the rest of the world because we're all connected. So to me, that's the importance of this collection. And so I'm very excited to be able to work with all the items and make sure they are properly digitized and make sure they are presented on our website so more people will be able to access them.
In July of 2018, Derek Beard sadly passed away, but with the help of the Library of Congress, they've continued to preserve the story of Omar ibn Said with the help of their conservation team. Since the acquisition of these manuscripts, they've made a replica of these documents, which maintain its authentic texture and appearance.
So we use a device similar to these, but we hand carry a camera to the conservation division, and that's what we had done to do the Omar Said papers. They were done on site in conservation because they couldn't travel to this building, given their fragility and conditions that they were in. So as conservation was treating those, they would quickly call us and say, hey, we'd have 10 ready, we'd go over and shoot them and create the files. And the handling was done by them on site, and we would set up our camera and shoot right there on the premises. So as we had 10 documents or maybe 20 ready to go, I'd say within an hour to 2 hours, we were able to capture all of them from front to back. And so, you know, the digitization side, because it's all instant capture, our newest technology, is very, very fast now. So the handling of the item could take a lot longer than the actual capturing process.
What happens if the ink fades?
And it does in this case. What we try to do is salvage it by getting really good digital files to try and later historians or whomever can take those images and work with them on their end through using Photoshop to reestablish what the colors might have been. So there's a lot of that goes on outside of our realm. This is why it's very important to set it up to a color checker like I showed you, because that ensures that you're getting the color accuracy in today's color. But it can be recreated based on those numbers that we achieve on those targets. The life cycle of our technology runs about 10 years. So up until 10 years ago, we were using old linear technology, which doing a newspaper like we saw would be a pass of about 5 to 7 minutes per sheet. Today it's 2 seconds with no compromising quality or anything of that nature.
Can cause endless discussion amongst researchers when someone says, I think this is in this person's hand, and someone may disagree and think that it looks more like another person. But when you've got a manuscript like this that has the main body of the manuscript, but then it clearly has marginalia that's been written by someone else, it has pagination that may have been written by someone else, it has a cover that's added that has yet another style of hand on it. It's educated guesses based on evidence, and the more data points you have, the better. So the more examples that you have, the better. But mostly it is just a good. Absolutely, yeah.
And in addition to, you can see a lot in the microscope, difference between the inks, and you can see a lot in UV, and we also have infrared photography that we can apply, and that's very useful if somebody's tried to make a correction in the script. You can usually see a difference in one of those kinds of lighting conditions.
Abolitionist people, they were studying these cultures in West Africa because they became convinced that the only way of stopping the slave trade was having the Muslim cultures intervene. So this book is his writing of his reading of a lot of different people's journeys into West Africa. But think how large Africa is. And so all these different people's journeys and what they discovered, and he comes to the conclusion at the end of his book, the only way that we're going to be able to really say something meaningful about these cultures is if we learn the language and live there for a substantial period of time.
So my background is in literature and language. So I was very interested in the aspect of the story about how this is the only known slave narrative that was written by a slave who was in captivity in Arabic. So I was very interested in that aspect and the kind of authenticity that went to the manuscript, and also the kinds of questions that raised about others like him, about Arabic speakers who were slaves and their stories. So that was one of my access points. And I think also just the nuance that it added to my understanding or my learning about American slavery. I think that was also really interesting because I had not heard about him. I didn't know a lot about the history of Muslim slaves in America. So I think you know, for me, it was good to be exposed to something that I didn't know anything about. And frankly, now I really feel like I should, learn more. And like I said, I'm going back to kind of being proud of the institution, being proud to work here, because I think that it's wonderful to present another voice and present another example, and to really show diverse voices, even diversity within diversity, so to speak. So my hope is that bringing this collection forward, that many people who perhaps had never heard of the Library of Congress, or had never been to the Library of Congress, or had never used it for research, will be able to in some ways see themselves here, and be able to see that there is a value in history, in their history, and will be encouraged to come here or go online and further their own research, whether that's, like I said, for their academic projects or even for their personal research. So I really hope that they can also see the value in their own stories.
Throughout the process of creating this film, my peers and I gained a wealth of knowledge concerning the Islamic background of many Africans enslaved in America. These were human beings who were treated as animals, human beings with their own rich culture, set of beliefs, way of life, and families. It is our hope that the publishing of this document will help change the perception of Islam's history in America.